Well, another episode, Sunday, October 7th, 2003. Want to just share the reason why I've with MIA since the first episode. And there's a lot of things that have actually happened. Even during the first episode, which I thought that I would be able to continue, even though there was a lot of things going on with my mom, who was sick, who had a stroke in the middle of August and continued to be upcline episode when I recorded. And then things took a turn very quickly. A couple of weeks of September and end of September, she passed. My mom was 93 years old. And although I still experience lots of sadness, it's good to know that she lived a great life. So being in Chicago, I had to go to New York several times. Still making those trips out there to close out some business of hers. But I hope that I should be back to a normal schedule real soon. In fact, my plan is from this point for the next 7 weeks is to give you 7 episodes, 7 straight weeks. And I hope everything goes well, even though I have a business trip this coming week. And when I go back, I'm back in Chicago for a little bit and then I'm off again to New York. Luckily, my oldest son has been with me as my companion, and I'm grateful that he's been there to help me. We figure everything out, as it would have been impossible to do everything in the time that I've done it without him, my wife, and my youngest son. Greg. We are very, like I said, we're sad, but she lived a great life, and she was a great person. A lot of influence on me. He was. Taught me what it was to be consistent, faithful, better. But I am not. I am actually very clear. And sometimes I was just thinking this morning, I usually call her at 9 o'clock every Sunday for the last 8 or 9 years. Sunday was our time. In fact, I would even be late to church the Sundays I go because I'm talking to her. Make sure I talk to her at our time. So I'm going to miss that. Probably today was the first day it really hit me that I didn't have that call to make. And I was the one who always called. She never called because she says she didn't want to interrupt me what I was doing in my day. She knows I'm always at it in kind of way. I want to let you all know that if you received my newsletter this morning, I plan to also send 7 straight newsletters. And then there'll be a break. And then I'll be back about the second week of January. It's kind of the usual schedule. I think it might be the third week of January. I'll let you know as it gets closer. But I'm pretty certain that we'll be able to hit the 7 straight weeks with content and great shows, great panels coming up as well. We experienced, I had one for the first episode, my 10th year inauguration of the podcast. In the meantime, I want you to listen to this little short blurb of an interview I did with Kenneth L. Johnson, who's been on the podcast a couple of times. And we talked about today's job search, as we always do. And I just want to give you something to carry on for the week. And that was a great topic. It was on his Black Box podcast app. And it's actually an app. If you, especially particularly though the contents for anyone is focused on Black men and their career job search and their career health and welfare. So I look forward to hearing your feedback on that. Here's a few minutes of it. And then next week, I'll be back with another show on some more outtakes of some interviews that I've done recently. And I'll also be giving you some new stuff too. All of it's really new stuff. All of it's in the past few months, but I've got some more things up my sleeve. I'm always publishing on the blog as well. So don't forget to go there and check things out. So in the meantime, peace in the valley of love. Enjoy this excerpt with myself and Kenneth L. Johnson.
Speak about the future of job search often.
A lot, yeah.
And you positioned yourself as someone who's knowledgeable in that area and thinking it through. People are wondering what's happening out here with AI and machine learning and with the prevalence of LinkedIn as a tool and resource to not only job search, but to network and brand through. What is the future of job search as you see it? You don't have to go 30 years down the road, but what's happening right now that you're like, wow, people need to probably pay attention to this?
There was a study back in 2013, 2014 that was done by DeVry University. They had their own committee and research group that looked into the futures of careers. And what they said was in 2020, there'll be a nice chunk of the workforce be working as consultants, and they'll be able to, that include the idea that they'll be able to work remotely, that they'll be 1099 employees. What happened in 2020? A lot of people end up working remote, and there's more that end up working as consultants. So fast forward to 2023 and beyond, we're going to see probably about 40, 45, maybe even 50% of the workforce as consultants in some kind of way. If at least if they do have a full-time job, they will have some kind of consulting job. And I've seen people move into that space a lot easier than they ever have, because for people who really want to, they'll first look at Indeed and they'll look at consultings and they'll get overwhelmed by what's really there. But people who really been able to slip right into it already have a lane that they're very strong in and have enough experience to where they say, hey, I can offer your company this. So they can go through Indeed, don't apply to the position, but they contact the company.
Yes.
They contact the company and say, hey, I could fill in while you're trying to fill this position. So they are able to get that. In fact, I have a very close relative that actually, when she left to get on to a government job, her former company said, hey, why don't you stay on as a consultant? And they work around her schedule. So not only she got the pay jump, but she got the other pay jump. So she's able to work full time, and she is able to work as a consultant. And for the larger part, that's what, if people kept their options open and kept their eyes open, the opportunities are there. Now, I don't want to say that there's going to be a whole bunch of people be able to jump that, but it takes some creativity and ingenuity to make it happen.
Indeed. I'm sure you're familiar with JT O'Donnell. JT, that I start hearing, and this was many years ago, start speaking about everybody operating as a business of one. And that's what I'm hearing you speak about, where you're literally contracting your individual services out to maybe a global organization, but not just completely skilled consultants, but people that literally are coming from a place in an organization saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to back out, but come back in as my own entity. And I think that's really interesting, but I definitely see a lot of that happening. So once people start moving in that direction, like people will start having, this is what's interesting. So I want to hear this from your perspective. So once people start moving in that direction, they're literally going to need like a one pager, like a brag book to market their services to companies. Our resumes are really trending in that direction, where you're using tools like LinkedIn to show media and show different things that you're doing to make you more attractive to employers. Is that the way we're looking at it? Should everybody embrace that?
LinkedIn is already a brag book, by the way. And I think the resume is, we're not going to say the resume is dead. That's for somebody else's conversation. This conversation is looking at the broader picture where everybody can have access to your experience. Resume is meant that is targeted, and that's for a specific audience. The LinkedIn is for specific, but anybody could take a look at that and to see and to venture how deep they want to get with you. If you're active, you make yourself more marketable. If you're inactive, you're not as marketable. Not to say that you can't get the opportunity, because there's some recruiters, quite frankly, who will target those
who have their heads down, they're working, especially in the executive space. They're interested in those folks. However, should you decide to put a shingle out and start posting, you start commenting and start engaging in conversations, you become much more visible. So the whole idea of being visible and marketable and having a portfolio already out there on the interwebs without having any other presence is enough for most companies to start at least some kind of to creep on your LinkedIn profile.
So as a search firm with a focus on diversity, often we're searching for those passive candidates that you speak about, right? Mm-hmm. Because typically we're looking at the competitors of our clients. We look at their competitors and just all the players in the space and say, oh, wow, Mark Anthony Dyson, he seems to be doing really good work out here. He's not on LinkedIn that much, but I can see his background is ideal for this situation. And then we just pick up, we just touch in and see if we can have a conversation, because not only are those people ideal candidates, but they also know other people with similar skill sets because they're so engrossed in their career and the work that they do. You, when you were doing your coaching, how were you encouraging or directing your clients on how to move forward and just position themselves for other opportunities? That could be jobs, speaking engagements, whatever it may be.
Well, I think a lot of people were, and at that time, branding became more of a household word at that particular time. And a lot of the clients that I had that were in those professional realms were talking a lot branding. Some really didn't know what in the world they were talking about, but there were others who were around other people who always talked about their brand. And that was amongst the younger Gen X, millennial people at that particular time. Gen Z wasn't quite in that realm, although they made the smoothest transition of any generation that's ever been, because some of them had brands because they had YouTube channels, they had other spaces where they were in. But for the most part, a lot of it would stem from the LinkedIn profile and being able to get a recruiter to take a look at them, and then also be introduced to other recruiters that would also be able to help them with their presence and answer their questions, and also eventually find their ways into getting jobs. Not that LinkedIn is some magic elixir, but really most of the studies, between the surveys, between 80 and 90% of recruiters are on LinkedIn, probably far less who really engage on LinkedIn, but they are at least taking a look and creeping around to see who are the best candidates. And also they listen to the conversations that are going on. They're inside those groups. They're inside those cliques, if you will, or inside those communities. And that's where a lot of people have been getting jobs. I think in the last 5 to 6 years, they've been involved in communities, whether it's in LinkedIn or their association or organizations, and they find out about opportunities or imminent opportunities, and they are able to jump on those, not necessarily on the job boards or the LinkedIn job application process. Now, they do have to apply to the job, but they find out through the word of mouth, and they're in those places where there are conversations. And that's where a lot of them ended up they made that jump at that particular time. I wish more people would do that now. But I think back then, LinkedIn groups was a real thing, as opposed to now. Some groups, yes, some groups, no. But even outside of that, the organizations, associations, just through announcements and getting newsletters, people can put 2 to 2 together without really hearing an official announcement that so-and-so is leaving this position and moving to that position. Oh, I had my eye on that position for a while. Why don't I go apply?